Hey, welcome to the Full Art Secret Podcast. I'm your host, Chaden Young. Today we have a special guest, Denise from Crown Consulting. Denise, hey, how are you? Thanks for jumping on today.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. You're coming to us from the road. Where are you at right now?
I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm taking care of one of my clients.
Love that. Getting out to meet them in person. Man, that's amazing. How's the weather out there in Baltimore right now?
Yeah, last week I froze. Today it was pretty decent, and tomorrow we're going to freeze again. So this Florida girl is not knowing what to do with this Baltimore weather here.
Yeah, definitely. It's a tricky time of the year. If you ever want good weather, just come down to sunny St. George. The weather's great. I think we're in the 80s today, and man, it's just nice. So anyways, well, let's jump into it. For those that are listening that don't know who you are, don't know anything about Crown Consulting, why don't you give just a little bit of background of how this whole thing got started and what led you to where you're at today?
Sure. I have been in the dental field for about a little over 17 years. I have worked with dentists, single dentists, all the way up to DSOs that have 1,000 plus practices. I've either worked for or with a combination of them. And actually how it really started is I was actually working for a DSO, and a couple of dentists started in their own and wanted to go out and open their own practices, and they asked for help. And the second one said to me, I'm not taking any more help. Don't say a word to me until you open your own business, because you need to do this. And I was like, no. And they're like, no, Denise. And I said, okay. So I kind of did it a little bit part-time. And then I said, no, they need help and they're not getting the guidance that they need properly. They're being told whatever they need to be told by the people to get them to do what they want them to do instead of what's really right for the dentist. So that's what Crown Consulting is about. We deal with dentists who are overwhelmed or want to start something and really don't know where to go. And we give them solid, honest advice with integrity. And we're there, boots on the ground. We just don't hand them a pamphlet and say, see ya. We're there. We walk with them. We talk with them. And we show them really how to ride the bike. We just don't give them the instruction manual.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What's been your favorite thing about, I love that you had the dentist that said, hey, like they knew what you were doing. They believed in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. I love having people like that around you. What's been the most enjoyable thing for you as you've started this venture? And start is probably the wrong word, because I know you've been doing this for a while, but what's been the main driver for you, and what have you really enjoyed about all this?
So I think the biggest thing that really has hit me when I first got headhunted into the DSO, I was working in marketing, and the headhunter said to me, hey, we change lives. And I'm like in my head going, what a great tagline, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't realize until I physically got in there, do we change lives? And, just a quick little story, if I may. There's one thing that has sat with me for 10 plus years is I was at the DSO and I got a phone call from one of my employees, and they said, hey, this person is waiting for a denture, and they said they're not going to, be here tomorrow and they need it in a day. And I'm like, no, your first thought is no, right? That you can't do it. It's crazy. So long story short, I talked to the lab tech and everything, and I forgot about it. And then the next day I called her for something else, and she's like, hey, you've got to hear the story. And, you kind of get numb to some of the stories, sadly, right? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, Denise, listen to this story. I said, okay. So there was two women there. One didn't speak English, and she was the patient, and the other one was her advocate. When we delivered the denture, which was 8:00 at night, by the way, they stayed all through that time. So kudos to them. She said, you have no idea what you did today. She said 15 years ago, this woman was kidnapped in South America, and she was sold into sex slavery. And I run a organization that helps women get out. And tomorrow she's going to see her kids for the very first time in 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And it hits you and you're like, I said no to start with,
Yeah.
That's what we do. Like, no, that's crazy. That's too much. But you just never know who you're touching and what the story is, right? And I'm a part of this woman's life, and I'll never meet her, and I'll never know what happened, but I was able to do something. And that made me it sparked something in me about how do we change lives. And we change lives by helping dentists, get out of overwhelm, which help patients. So it's kind of me like the biggest win-win I could ever say for me is I get to drive numbers and crush them and have fun doing that. But in the same sense, I'm doing it because I'm taking care of people and patients. And it's just the best I could ever think of.
I love that. I love every patient, every doctor, everybody has their own unique story, right? And I mean, man, that's amazing. And also April being the Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. I mean, just coincidentally, right? With that and the man, that's amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so let's jump on. So or jump into it, I should say. So a lot of offices, a lot of doctors, as they begin their journey, whether it's they start their own practice or they're an associate and then they purchase their own practice from there, everybody wants to grow, of course, and we want to be there to help them. But some of those operational things that people just don't think about and practice owners don't think about are adding an associate. And so, really, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about with you, because you've done this, you've helped a lot of offices go through this. Just talk through when is the time, what are the things that they should be looking for, and let's just expand on that and explore this topic for our offices that are listening.
Sure, sure. So I put a little together a little slideshow because I think it would just help a little bit. And for anyone who's just listening, I will kind of tell you what the title of the slide is, and we'll talk through it so you can function with us as well. When do you bring on, that next person? So really, it's an individual thing. It's when you feel that nudge. Like, why do you want to bring on a next person? What is it? Has your passion changed? Do you want to add another arm of business? Which is really kind of like what you do, right? In your world, and that's great. And they get super excited. I'm going to do all on floors. I'm going to do ortho. I'm going to do this, but we can't leave our patient base. So, what do we do from that point on?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's something that a lot of practices go through, right? Especially on our side of the house when an office comes into the full arch space, most providers get into this because they love it. They love to do the surgery, they love to be involved with the patients. The problem with that, and this isn't a problem, but the thing that providers run into is the majority of their business, the base of their business is the bread and butter dentistry, right? Your traditional dentistry. And so being able to have knowing that, hey, I want to go into this full arch space, but I don't want to completely neglect this patient base that they have built up over years and years and years of hard work. I think that really, I mean, that nudge that you're talking about, that's exactly that.
And you have to, even if you have that nudge, you still have to look at these things. Is your schedule full? Have you outgrown it? Do you have extra hours that you can actually add to? Just because you think it's full, is it really productively full?
Yeah.
That's a big one, right?
Yep.
And then, are you booking out 30 plus days? That's a huge indication that we need to move on something, whether we're adding an associate, whether we're adding a hygienist, whatever. This is a quick thing to say, okay, we need to look at what our schedules are and where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Are you stuck? I think that's a big one. Most people go, I'm not stuck, I'm not stuck. And 135 to 140, if you're in the DSO world, you're like, that's nothing, right? If you're in like the private practice, you're like, yeah, how do I get to that next level? Even in the DSO space, you get to that next level, but it's a difference when you bring on an associate in a DSO world than it is when you bring in a private. Generally, in a DSO world, you're looking at about 175 plus. In the private practice world, you're looking at about 135 to 140, and you kind of plateau because I have no more hours. I have no more operatories. Like, what do I do at this point? This is another quick way to indicate whether you need some issues or you need some help. And the grind, are you done? Like, I'm grinding, I can't make any further. I can't go anywhere. What do I do from there? So those are kind of your key indicators.
I want to hit on that real quick because it's a topic that's not discussed a lot in dentistry. Dentistry has a very, very high, I'll just speak very plainly from my side on the military. The military, one of the highest suicide rates per population, right? Per population group. It's more than double the US average. And there's a number of factors that go into it. And the military has done a lot to try and prevent that. On the same side in dentistry, it's actually something that people don't talk about a lot is the anxiety, the pressure, the stress, the depression that often is as especially as a practice owner and even as a business owner, people go through, they don't think about it. There are other people that are going through the same thing that I'm going through right now. And why? How do I escape this? And unfortunately, a lot of the times the escape is not a good one, right? And so, having that indicator along with those others that you mentioned, I think are really, really helpful for an office or a practice owner to be able to say, hey, am I hitting that benchmark from a revenue standpoint? Am I, is my schedule capped? Am I booking out 30 plus days? Or am I just so overwhelmed with what's going on that I can't keep my head above water? My personal and family life is being significantly depleted because of that. Those are all just really solid indicators that, hey, it might be time and you might want to think about this. It may be a little stressful without the right partner, right? But it may be a little stressful to try and figure this out. But that's what we're here to try and talk about right now, right?
Yes, and Shane, thank you for bringing that up because I think that gets brushed under the rug so much. I have personally lost two dentists to this, and so it's a huge weight on me. That's why I think I just am an advocate for the dentist because I just have seen what it has done. And I want to be there. I want to help them. I want them to know, guess what? You're not alone and there's always a tomorrow, right? And we
100%.
can figure it out. Today ends at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. We're done, but there's 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So let's move forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that.
Expanding hours or more access to care for patients. That's a huge one. Like they want to take care of more patients and they don't know what to do with it. So now we get into like, are we ready? Right? Here's where we are. We got the nudge. We understand that we can do it. We're on this path. We aim for 1.3 to 1.5 gross for the year. Are you consistently doing 140 plus? Do you have sufficient patient volume to support your associate's schedule? That's huge. And then you just really need to do a deep dive into your cost. Profit, what's the profitability? Bringing somebody else on is going to definitely cut into salaries, especially your own, right? And I think dentists don't think about that right off the bat until that first, they hire them, they put them on, and they're like, yes, they're going to do this and this and this and this. And then unfortunately, they get their first paycheck and they're like, what happened? And you're not producing, but we didn't set them up for success. So here's a couple of things that we need to do to set them up for success, right? We have to make sure that you should have at least 5 operatories. Optimum is 6 or more. Active patients, at least 1,500. And when I say active, that's in 12 months, not 24, 36 months, 12. That's a huge one. Staffing considerations. If you're bringing somebody else on, you're going to have to bring on another DA. Bottom line, right away, possibly we're going into hygiene, possibly another office staff member, depending, but definitely a dental assistant. So you're bringing on 2 salaries. And you also have to make sure and plan for training and proper integration into the team as well as into the office.
Denise, as you've done this, you know, these numbers and these indicators are, I mean, they're very, very specific. Why, if I can just dig a little deeper behind that, why or how have you identified that these are like the very easy numbers to look at to be able to indicate like, okay, we're ready to move into that next level?
Jaden, I think the biggest thing, and it'll be on, in later, and we'll talk about it. But one of the biggest thing is when the doctor's going, okay, I've got the nudge. I think I can do this. We need to know, what is your end game, doc? What do you want out of this? Do you want just to build this practice? Or are we doing it so we can expand to multiple practices? And if we expand to multiple practices, is the end game truly the check from the PE company that you want out of at the end? There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
But we have to know the end to keep your road proper to get you where you need to go. Otherwise, you're kind of just willy-nilly all around and you're in this lane, this lane, and this lane, and you might have, minimal success, but you're not going to have the success that you're looking for. And I think that's the biggest thing is, what do we need to do? So this is where the indicators come from, because if you're a PE company, they're not looking at you unless you have 5 practices and you're at 1.5 million, right? So if you're at 140 a month, you're at 1.6. So I dialed it back a little bit from 1.3 and 1.5 because of the fact that there are just because you're not hitting that exact 1.6 doesn't mean we don't have that proper ability to get you to that next level or that next lane. So it has the flexibility, but it's still indicators that you need to like look for, because I think dentists need stop signs. They need like road signs of where to go. This is right. This is it. Okay, I have somewhere to go, because unfortunately they just kind of poop out of school and they know how to do great dentistry and they learn that, but they don't learn how to do great business. So setting these indicators up for them, I think helps them go along the path.
Yeah, and I love that you. I mean, starting with the end in mind, right? Knowing what is my goal? Is my goal to eventually sell to a PE firm? Is my goal to build this to multi-practice location, or is my goal just to live a really good life? You know, not be super stressed out with the work schedule, but still make a good amount of money and provide a good living for my family, for my employees. And so, I really love beginning with the end in mind on that. So, awesome.
The next thing is, okay, you did your due diligence, like you have this, but psychologically, are you ready for it? Right? And most dentists are like, yeah, no problem. And they never put this in practice. And psychological has everything to do with every part of your practice. And I love talking about that, but we're going to stick to this. So, psychologically, what is it? Are you ready to teach and mentor? Are you a good teacher or mentor? If you're not, we need to talk about some things, because it's going to really affect you. You know, it's going to put a big paradigm shift into your practice, the way the team goes, because there's not mommy and daddy anymore. There's mommy and daddy and two mommies or two daddies or whatever it is. Now you can split. The children split. I like this one better. I like this doctor better, right? So you have to be ready for stuff like that. Do you have the infrastructure in place right now that's scalable? Huge. Do not bring somebody on if you do not have processes in place, because you're going to bottom out and it's just going to implode from the inside. That generally happens, and then they never try again because they get scared, right? And that fear comes over them, and they never really fulfill what they want to. And the biggest thing too is it a good fit? Don't just hire someone because they said yes, I can do it, and maybe you offered them something cheaper and they said they took it, because then they're like, yeah, I'll sign you. No, I mean that'll kill your practice, and you don't realize it does, but it really, really does. Alignment is huge. It has a lot to do with your values and your vision, because again, talking about what you want to do at the end, they got to be along there. Are you going to make them a partner? Are they just there to learn something and move on their own? And it's okay to have those questions, and it's even okay to put somebody on like that. If you understand it and you know it, then we build towards that, and we understand that at some point we're bringing somebody else in at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that these questions, they're very key aspects that I think that you have to get right, from the beginning? And have to is maybe too strong of word, that you should try and get right, like the culture fit, right? Do you think it's necessary for an office to know, hey, do I want to bring these guys on as a partner at some point? Or is that something that we can kind of figure out a little bit later on down the road before we get to that decision point?
Sure, I think alignment is huge. So you need to be just as honest with the doctor coming on and ask them what is their end game,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to know where they are too. Like I said, it could be for a short time or it could be for a long time. But you got to get clarity now before you sign dotted lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the biggest thing. And I think transparency and clarity, we lose in the dental field too much. It gets very muddy because a lot of us don't want to say things, or we're afraid we're going to hurt people's feelings. And that goes for patients as well as, peer to peer. It's okay to have those conversations, right? It's just the way you have a conversation. It doesn't have to be accusatory, it's your tone, but it's necessary for not only for you and your team, but for that person coming on. And it's only fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. 100%.
Here's where we talked about, do we do partnership or is it succession? Do you want out and just eventually want this guy or this girl, this dentist, the next dentist, take over? And what does that look like? What kind of timelines do you want? What kind of benchmarks do you want? What are the expectations? Again, all about clarity.
Yeah.
And I think this is huge too. Define your exit. A lot of dentists bring on an associate and leave them in the dark. And that is the biggest problem, because when somebody feels like something's been hidden for them, then they get guarded, and then they don't open up, right? And then they start looking, well, maybe this one looks better, or this grass looks greener over here, and you're sabotaging yourself for not being transparent. It just because you're transparent doesn't mean you lose your authority. It doesn't mean you lose your control over the thing. It means that you're bringing something on, you're bringing another person on, and you're in the same lane, right?
Yeah.
Don't be blind. Don't build something blindly. Build it with intention and on purpose.
And I think that's just how you mentioned that. Hey, if you don't know what your exit strategy is today, that's okay. I mean, be open, be transparent. I don't know if the goal is to bring you on as a partner. I don't know if the goal is to me to eventually sell this. But what I do know is this is where I'm at right now, and we'll have the conversation as things continue to evolve. Again, in that spirit of transparency and collaboration, right?
Exactly. And I think it makes you more approachable to the associate, because guess what? They're more than likely just came out of dental school and they don't really know what they want either, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it makes them feel like, okay, I can just take a breath and maybe we can figure this out together. And that's the key. When you do anything together in anybody's mind, it works, and people then try to work towards everything
Hmm.
instead of against it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this slide, I think, is a big one, right? This really talks about numbers, and there's a lot of numbers here, but I'm just going to kind of like tell you it shows what you can expect money wise. If a dentist comes out here and he's doing like 1.3, he's coming out more than likely around 480,000 ish, 450 ish himself. But now we're bringing on an associate. So now his income now drops to about 338. And that's usually where we start panicking, right?
Yeah.
Why did it drop? Why did it drop? Well, more than likely, you're going to pay your associate around the 33% of collections, is generally what the biggest thing is. They're only going to do about 30% of the work in the very beginning because they need to be mentored. If you can do anything that not only helps you, but helps your associate, make a mini me. If I can't say that enough, make a mini me of that person, because that's how you grow. Because once you can make a mini me, guess what? You plop to two, and you have the second mini me, and three, and four, and it becomes so much easier because you've got that infrastructure and it's scalable, and you're really just duplicate, and before you know it, you're being able to relax. You're having that little Mai Tai with the little umbrella
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely
enjoying
right.
life.
Yeah.
But this is key, because you have to know you're going to share things. You're going to lose money in the beginning out of your salary, but you have to sometimes, what's that old saying? You have to spend money to make money sometimes,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
It's true.
absolutely.
You have to invest. You don't think of it as you're losing money. Think of it as you're investing in your future as well as their future. So this is an investment that's going to give you a huge ROI at the end if you do it right. And really talking about it, I think it's huge to talk about, when is it right? What should I do? Tell me your fears. Tell me what you want at the end. Talking is the communication. And I think if I could say anything about dentistry, if we could communicate better to our patients, to our teams, to each other, we would be so much better off with it. And this is really just kind of a big kind of bow, if you want to talk about it. Whether you're driven by growth or burnout, new opportunities, or succession planning, you really need to make sure your decision has clarity and a strategy behind it. Please don't go in willy-nilly. Please don't go in with someone who has bells and whistles and looks great or whatever. Do a deep dive. This is your life. And it's not only affecting you, it'll affect your team, it'll affect your patients, but it'll affect your family,
Yeah.
right? And if you don't have that structure, if you can't hang your hat when you walk through the door to your family and that's your safe space, then this becomes too overwhelming, right? So protect that and do that with clarity and do it with strategy. And really, that's the biggest thing I could say to you.
I think that it's important too to also recognize that as an associate going in and looking for your opportunity, what are the next steps? What do I want to do Is it practice ownership? Do I want to just go in and work with patients and I don't want to worry about the business side of things, which is not wrong, right? But knowing too, as an associate, hey, these are the things that I should be looking for. On the same note, from the business operator owner standpoint, these are the things that I can expect them to be looking for. And if you can align those and you can marry that all up with proper planning on that side, and then also with an associate that has an idea of what they're looking for, I think that it's a really, really good, it's a good unison and it's a good marriage, and also just makes for a good partnership when it comes to bringing on this additional person, which is, as you said, an investment into the practice for that long-term growth and those long-term goals and planning that we all start with.
If you're a dentist, do not bring on an associate because you don't want to do fillings. Don't give them the overflow column. If that's your idea, bringing them on, you will lose an associate. You will, unfortunately, they will say what happened and they will start in the community, and you don't want that kind of reputation in the community, and you've
Mm-hmm.
done yourself no favors on any end, whether it's by reputation or financially, right? So really kind of sit down and say, why am I bringing this on? What is the purpose of it? And if it is because you don't want to do fillings or something anymore, then there's strategic ways that we can build schedules to where it will be to your best interest and still make you profitable, and really kind of not mess with somebody else's life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk to dentists all the time, and man, I've heard horror stories of how they were treated, or just some frankly very unethical things that have been done. And I don't think that those stories represent the community as a whole very well. I think that they're one-off cases and incidences. But to your point, you don't want to become that. You don't want to be that story or that headline. And so making sure you have everything lined up and ironed out before you go into it is the best trajectory. Is to have a plan. The plan may not always go exactly as you have it laid out, but at least you have something to go off of, and then you can always pivot from there. But when you have nothing to go off of, well, it's really hard to pivot from nothing, right?
Exactly. And strategy should never be concrete, it should be fluid, right? And that's what we need to really think about. Everybody just has a strategy and we have to stick to it 100%. No, it's a fluid, it's a living, breathing thing that has to be looked at on a regular basis because things change. I mean, for heaven's sakes, a year ago, would we ever heard of tariffs? Would we have ever heard of, would we ever pay $10 for eggs? None of those things, we would think about stuff like that. But now we have to now say, okay, what can we do? What do we have to do? And it's a pivotal role. Life changes and will always throw curveballs at you. If you're so rigid, it's really going to be a tough life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As you've done this, talk to me just about what are some of the things that you've seen, some of the results that you've been able to help practices achieve. And let me ask one step before that. How long should a practice owner not be considering it, but how long should from, okay, I'm ready to move forward, I have a plan, to this person, the new associate is fully up, they're running, and we're back to doing good things? What's the time frame you typically see? And then I'd love to just dive in a little bit to some of the success that you've been able to see with offices.
Sure. I would say don't put a timeline on it because you need to find the right associate. And when I mean that, I'm talking about you need to check their personality. I know everybody wants to talk about their dental skills, but if you've got a patient who can't look a patient in the eye, or can't speak to them, or can't tell them what's really truly needs them, what they need to get healthy, and you're this very charismatic person, it's not going to go well. It really isn't. So find the right person. And honestly, dental schools aren't graduating like they used to, as many as many graduates. Some of them are losing and not doing, dental schools are closing, or they're not, the bigger schools aren't taking as many applicants and stuff like that. So what's going out in dentistry, as in like retiring, and what's coming in is a vast difference. So we have to think about that. So it could be you hit something on the head and you got somebody in a month, or it could take 3 months or 6 months. And if you're in more of a remote area, it's going to be tough, right? So you're going to,
It's going to take longer.
it will take longer. Yeah. And you have to be creative with your offer at the same time,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
That makes a lot of sense. Definitely.
Yeah. Because you need to be attractive. why are you know, why do I want to go to Podunk, USA when I can like be flashy New York City kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the way people think of stuff like that. And especially when you're coming out of school, because I wish I could get a hold of these professors, because what they put in these poor dentist heads are like, they pound it in here. You need to own, you need to do this. It's this perfect lifestyle. You'll be off on Fridays. You're golfing on Wednesdays, and you're making
Hmm.
2 million, 3 million a year. And they come out and they have all this debt, and now they're trying to do something and they don't know what to do with it. And then, you don't hear about the professor anymore or anything. They're not telling you what you should be doing or anything like that. And they're like, go to the big cities, you'll have this great lifestyle. They just pump all this stuff up. And I think that's part of such the overwhelm that dentists get, because they come out with this vision that's been placed in them for 4 solid years, and it's not reality.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I talk to so many dentists, and I help new dentists and new grads coming out, because we want that. I just talked to a group last week of the veterans who are doing a GPR for the veterans, which is fantastic. And they're like, "Oh, I did a GPR," which is great. It's like an internship for medical doctors. But unfortunately, in the VA, everything is covered. So you don't need to really learn about insurance. You don't need to know how to present your case or anything like that. So like when we had that, it was a 2 hour conversation or presentation, and I was like 2 hours thinking in my head, and I was like, it was 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I'm like, wait, we're not even close to being done yet. There's still so much more you need to know. And
yeah.
they're furiously writing things down, and I'm like, I'll just send you the presentation, I'll just send it to you so you guys can have it, but for you need it. But I think that's what we do. The professors do a disjustice to these dentists. And that's where we come in, right? And talking about successes, I think success can be measured multiple ways, right? Not every dentist that walks out wants to own 5 practices or wants to be the clinical director of a big DSO. They might just want to be that nice mom and pop in that hometown that they've grown up in their entire time.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It is okay if that's what you want. And we'll give you a plan, and we'll give you a strategy to keep you there, to keep you profitable, and to keep you at your kids' soccer games on Saturday mornings, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you want to be this rock star who just kills it, and then you're going to throw in surgeries and all on fours, and I'm doing ortho, and I'm going to go to Brazil and learn how to do, I don't know, implants and all on 12s, or no, there's no on
Yeah.
12s, but we've got it for you too. We can show you how to get there, because a lot of times they want to do it and they're just shooting darts at this dartboard, but they're blind, and they don't, they're hoping to God they hit something, right?
Yeah.
And when they hit, they're like, woohoo. But, once the air is out of the bubble, you got to find another balloon to pop, kind of thing, right? So, it really makes a difference on what they want to do. I would say probably some of the biggest success stories that we've had. I have a dentist that I worked with at a DSO. He now has 9 practices, and 1, 2, 3 of his associates that were associates that we hired, 4, either own their own practice or own multiple practices, and are doing very well for themselves, and have run on the same strategies that we've been able to supply for them, and teach, and learned from all different things. My knowledge comes from all different areas, right? And I love that. I hate when people say, oh, DSOs are terrible, or private practice is terrible, or what, it doesn't fit everybody, whether you're a patient or whether you're a dentist. But find your place. And
Yeah.
when you find your place, we can help you do what you need to do to get you where you want to go.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that. I mean, the overwhelming thing, and the overwhelming just undertone of this entire conversation is what's your goal? What is your goal? Because success and achievement for one person looks vastly different than another person. And so just knowing what that is, at least, and it doesn't need to be super well thought out, right? It can just be, okay, I want to, you mentioned being that go-to dentist in your hometown. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I moved from Salt Lake down to Southern Utah to St. George, which isn't a super small place. However, it is a lot less fast paced than Salt Lake because for my family and for myself, this is what I wanted. Now, granted, my work is still remote and I talk to offices all over the country, but for me and what I wanted and what I needed was just a little bit of a smaller town feel. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I also don't think there's anything wrong if someone wants to live in the quote unquote big city and have this massive practice that's, with 20 operatories and they're just, they're crushing it. They're doing multiple all-in-4 cases every single day. There's nothing wrong with that either. It's just everybody's goals are a little bit different. So, well, Denise, I mean, if somebody wants to talk to you, I think that we've covered a lot of information, and man, I feel like we've just scratched the surface on all of this. Look at that. We got your info right there. Why don't you read that off for everybody who's not online watching this, so that if they want to just get in contact with you and they're looking to grow and expand and they're just maybe not quite sure what that looks like from a private practice standpoint, how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. You can send me an email at dellis, it's DELLIS, at mycrownconsulting.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. My phone number is 321-890-3024. And again, it's Denise Ellis.
Awesome. And I have to just mention this from our previous conversation. The Crown Consulting was not, if you don't mind me sharing, it wasn't purposeful. It was just by happenstance. And I love that. Good things, they happen and they come together. And I think it was meant to be.
I do too.
Thank you. Denise, this has been really fun. This has been very informative also. And I think that a lot of offices are going to find a lot of value in this conversation. Again, if you're looking for, you just need help, you want to have some guidance for your practice, whether that is you want to bring on an associate or you just don't know the next steps that you should be taking, I highly encourage you to reach out to Denise. She's awesome, as I've gotten to know her outside of the podcast. And I highly recommend you touching base with her. And if you know somebody who also might be looking for something that she can help them out with, by all means, please share her information. But between now and the next time, let's continue to transform lives. And if you like this episode, go ahead and like it, subscribe, share with your colleagues. And until next time.